All right, welcome back. We're here at our final section of Chapter 4, or Section 4.3, and we're going to talk about using studies wisely. And so we want to talk about the concept of sampling variability when making an inference about a population, and also talk about the meaning of statistically significant in the context of an experiment, when it's appropriate to make an inference about a population, when it's appropriate to make an inference about cause and effect. And of course, evaluate, make sure it's been part of an ethical manner. It's not part of the AP test, but it's important enough to mention and talk about. So we'll get through that pretty quickly here as we split this up into 2 days. But inference, okay, for sampling. When members of a sample are selected at random from a population, we can use sample results to make inferences about the population. Since many times it's not feasible to do everybody, we got to take a sample and then we want to try to say, okay, well, what does this mean for the population? So even when making an inference from a random sample, even if we select it perfectly, it would be surprising if the estimate from the sample was exactly equal to the truth. Okay, so there's error involved and there's not perfect. So sampling variability refers to the fact that different random samples of the same size from the same population can produce different estimates. It's not a perfect situation. One other thing to keep in mind is with the variability, larger random samples, so the larger your sample size is, they tend to produce estimates that are closer to the true population. Obviously, if you had the whole population, it would be true. So the closer you get to that, the more accurate you're going to be. So larger sample sizes are more accurate, are more precise, as you can see. All right, so let's talk about this. How much do NFL football players weigh on average? And in a random sample of 50 NFL players, the average weight was 244.4 pounds. Now, do you think that that's the true average weight of all NFL players? Well, no. It's the size of 50. And so if you took a different sample of 50, it would probably be different. So it'd be surprising if it was exactly there. Now, it should be in the ballpark or a good estimate, but not exactly. Now, the other question would be, which would be more likely to give an estimate closer to the true, a random sample of 50 or 100? Well, obviously 100, because it's tend to be closer because the sample size is larger. It gives you a better estimate of what we're doing. All right, let's talk about inference for experiments. Now, well-designed experiments allow for inferences about cause and effect. Now, in an experiment, there are two ways to explain why the average response for one group is different than the average response for another. The treatment does not have a different effect for the groups, and the difference in the response just might be chance variation in the random assignment. That could be. Or the treatment causes a difference in the average response of the group. So when the observed results of a study are too unusual to be explained by chance alone, results are called statistically significant. Okay, so we got to see how that works here. All right, so here we go. We have this situation. Is talking on a cell phone while driving more distracting than talking to a passenger? Now, David Strayer and his colleagues at the University of Utah designed an experiment to help answer this question. They used 48 undergraduate students as subjects. The researchers randomly assigned half of the subjects to drive in a simulator while talking on a cell phone, and the other half to drive in the simulator while talking to a passenger. One response variable was whether or not the driver stopped at a rest area that was specified by researchers before the simulation started. The table shows the results. Okay, so we kind of see the table over here. We've got our cell phone, people that had the cell phone that they were talking to. 12 stopped at the rest area, 12 didn't. And then when you're talking to the passenger, 21 stopped and 3 didn't. Okay, so we got to kind of say, okay, is this significant? Okay, what's the story? So let's find the difference in the proportions. Well, 21 of the 24 people that were talking to the passenger stopped at the rest area, but only 12 of the 24 with the talking on the cell phone stopped where they were supposed to at the rest area. So that difference is 0.375, 37.5% is that difference. All right, so now we kind of talk about this. There are 3 dots at 0.29, and so when we assumed the type of distraction doesn't matter, there were 3 simulated random samples where the difference in the proportion of students who stopped at the rest area is 0.29. So what that means is that, well, the difference of 0.375 is greater never occurred in the simulation. They never got that high in the simulation. So the difference is statistically significant. It is extremely unlikely to get a difference this big simply due to chance. So again, because of that high percentage increase, that was higher than anything else that they ever got, yeah, then it's telling you that there was something there, that it is statistically significant, and that the treatment was true. All right, so let's put it all together. So random selection of individuals allows inference about the population from which the individual was chosen. So if you choose them right, you can do things, you can infer things about the population. If you do the random assignment of individuals into groups, that allows inference about cause and effect. That allows you to say, okay, this might cause, this causes this effect. So when you put this table together, if you do the individuals assigned to groups, randomly assigned to groups, and the individuals who are randomly selected, well, yeah, that puts you in a good situation where you can make inferences about the population and cause and effect. And again, if you had no for each one, that's no. You can kind of see the chart here where, yeah, when you randomly select individuals, you can make inferences about cause and effect. When you randomly assign to groups, then you can do it about the population, is what they're saying here. Okay, you can see that in the chart. All right, so challenges, we talked about that before with correlation. That correlation does not necessarily mean causation. So there's several criteria for establishing causation when we can't do an experience. So if the association is strong, that's part of it. It's not standing alone. That's not enough to say there is causation. Our association is consistent. Larger values of the explanatory variable are associated with stronger responses, so that makes sense. The alleged cause does precede the effect in time. It comes before it, so that might be one of the causes. And then, again, the alleged cause is plausible. It doesn't make sense. Is kind of a big thing that we have to look at and see. All right. Again, ethics, as we talk about this, it's not required for the exam, but something we should talk about is that when you do a planned study, you have to, if you're doing it for school or doing anything like that, it should be reviewed in advance by an institutional review board. You know, when I did my I did a thesis for a master's degree, I had to have it approved by MSU when I did that. They had a board that looked at it and said, yeah, you're doing okay, and making sure that you're not doing anything that would cause damage to anybody. Especially if you're using human subjects, you have to get permission before you even do the study, for sure. Well, and animals too, you should, always be above and beyond reproach with that. All individuals who are subjects in the study must be given their informed consent before data are collected. So you got to tell them what you're doing and let them know, and then they can decide if they want to be part of it. And then all individual data must be kept confidential. Okay, so no names, that kind of stuff. We're not publishing those. And only the statistical summaries for groups of subjects may be made public. So there's some things ethically, just to make sure everyone's protected and data's secure and everything. You want to make sure that we're doing things right. We want to get information, but not at the expense of causing harm to anybody, any individual or thing. All right, so there we go. So that rounds up the 4.3 in Chapter 4. So again, these are some things that we should be looking at and make sure we know our terminology. And we'll get ready to go, wrap up Chapter 4. Until next time, I'm Mr. Moon.